Why do projects really fail? You may have heard about projects that failed, of course, not in your organization, or maybe you know these projects where it started really well and you were all very motivated. However, after a couple of, let's say, incidents, suddenly people stopped talking about the project and it just slowly and silently died out. No one talks about it anymore and you just think, well, that might be one way to get away with it. Of course, we're going to look into this project, and some of you might already have realized that we are back to the format we had before. So every week you get 2 episodes of this podcast. One episode is an interview, which was already published yesterday, an excellent interview with Derek Arden, international negotiation expert. Highly recommended. So after you listen to this episode, I strongly recommend to listen to the negotiation expert Derek Arden as well. And for those of you who speak German, on the German channel, I have a German podcast as well. We talk about corporate social responsibility and organizational social responsibility with an Austrian expert, Robert Kraxner. So if you speak German, highly recommended to listen there as well. Getting back to the project issue. When projects fail, there is of course a reason. Unfortunately, many people do not even look at the reason. Projects simply suddenly disappear from the surface of what is considered a topic in an organization. So you simply stop talking about the project and think, well, next time it hopefully will be better. But that of course is often not the case, because often there are things you simply have not seen. You want an example? Okay. By the way, it's June, so it's Pride Month. You know, Pride. LGBTQIA plus movement, very important. Diversity, inclusion. That's what many organizations have on their website. Did you know that it's Pride Month? No? It's a global event with billions and billions of dollars of commercial activities done to get access to a very profitable target audience. And also, of course, when it comes to recruiting talent, you want to be more diverse and you know that diversity is important. Science clearly has proven that diversity is very important. Then you might have done something about that. But if you're now sitting there and think, how could I have missed that? That is exactly the point I am making, because the problem is, and we now know that many people are looking for the top 3 tips, how to do better projects, etc. So this is not how project management works. There isn't an easy solution for a complex issue, and project management is a tremendously complex issue. And when we look at the core of the issues, there's one phrase where we have to start from. I know it's not an easy one, but it is the point we have to start from. So, aspect number 1. What we do not know, what we do not see, or what you believe, or you assume, or you want that it doesn't exist, that often is the problem. I just give you an example. When someone, often people who are either executives or member of a senior leadership team, say something we don't know, well, we will find out on the way, that might be too late. Something you don't see, so for example, your employer's brand on the market and you wonder why no talents show up when you offer jobs on the internet, that might be an issue as well. Or when there are aspects where you believe or you assume or you want that they don't exist. So for example, when people say pauses and buffer times, oh, we plan without that because we are agile. Really, really cool word, agile. Agile, of course, is a set of methods and tools, and you should master them and, of course, appropriately qualify, train, and coach people. While at the same time, what we often see in practice is that people just want to be agile, so they simply just put away all the processes they had, and then they say, now we're agile. No. What you are is called chaotic. That is a completely different aspect of business. It has nothing to do, when you say you're agile, it has nothing to do with having no processes, no rules, and anyone just does whatever they want and you try to figure it out on the way. This has nothing to do with project management or with being agile. So getting back to that phrase, anything you don't know, anything you don't see, and anything where you believe, assume, or you want that it doesn't exist, that is the problem. And when then a project goes wrong, which of course is never a great moment, not even looking at what happened before to have your lessons learned and do better in the future is the worst mistake you can do. However, it is common that most people do not have a lesson learned session. What people normally do is They say, sorry, we don't have time for the lessons learned moment, or the lessons learned session is something which you do on a Friday afternoon. Of course, it's voluntary to join that session, so only 1/3 of the team shows up. And then you simply talk about the best moment, and only in very, 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 very short time frames about what didn't go too well. And then you just think, time to celebrate again, here's the weekend, and then you just walk off. This has nothing to do with the lessons learned. And especially when I saw certain examples in the recent past. So with one organization, the owner of the company said, we can do lessons learned, but only during the weekend, because I don't see why we should spend time during the week on that. This shows on how low priorities you put important aspects like the lessons learned moment. So how can you do better? What are the issues? So issue number one is often people have the wrong focus. Often people have a wrong focus, and I'll just give you an example of the right focus and the wrong focus. Just last week, due to the access I got via Harvard Business Review, and they invited me to an interview with the former CEO from Best Buy, Hubertus Joly. See, the former CEO had a tremendous problem. Best Buy is an American electronics retailer, and they of course had one major competitor, and that competitor was called Amazon. So when you are on a price battle and you have locations all over the country where people can buy electronics but they do not, now you're in a severe crisis. What do? The usual solution is, and that is what you probably think about right now as well, the usual solution will be that you close locations, you lay off people, you fire them as quickly and as cheap as possible, which especially in the US is possible with no further ado. And then you simply try to focus on certain locations which are still profitable, mostly because the amount of people living there. That is the usual short-term thinking. And what Hubertus Joly as the CEO does, Hubertus Joly, by the way, meanwhile is a professor at Harvard Business School. So he has a clue about what he's talking because he looks into science when it comes to finding solutions and doesn't only listen to gut feelings. Because gut feelings sometimes just give you the wrong idea of what you should do, because often your gut feeling is based on your personal preference, maybe a bit of experience as well, but often simply personal preference and just something which is made out of thin air. So when you look at what has Hubertus Joly done in the interview, which lasted more than an hour, he explained to us what he has done. He started to work in a shop, although he was the CEO, and talked to employees. What do you think customers do not like here? He talked to customers. He looked into processes, and he came to the conclusion, and this is why he wrote the book, which is called Heart of the Business. He looked at exactly what is the heart of the business, and he knew they can only survive with excellent customer service. So laying people off was not an option. Because what Hubertus Joly said is that we have to move from IQ, which means only looking at the so-called intelligence and formal degrees of people, to the EQ, the emotional quotient, which was described a couple of years ago by Daniel Goleman, an excellent book which you should read, to the LQ, the learning quotient. What can the organization learn to be better? Or as he said, what we know, what we lack to know, and how we get to know it. That was his approach. And of course, many people will now say, no chance, Amazon will just win against you. No, they didn't. Hubertus Joly even partnered up with Amazon intensively to the point that not only Best Buy, because Best Buy was thinking, can we actually sell the Amazon Alexa, because that's pretty much selling the competitor and giving them an ear in other people's places. And of course they said yes. The CEO said yes, it's a great product, so we are going to sell it. And they partnered up with Amazon up to the point that Jeff Bezos, the owner of Amazon, said the best place to buy your TV is Best Buy. Because Amazon had locations where they partnered up with Best Buy, where people could look at the TV and then still order them via the Best Buy Amazon store. So Amazon got a share, Best Buy got a market share and the representation and the store on Amazon. So Hubertus Joly really saw how you can get synergies together instead of simply considering anyone who might be considered a competitor in the first place as someone where you could never work together. And that saved Best Buy. Best Buy is still there, they are doing very well, and that was the perfect example of how to have a look into long-term results. But unfortunately, most projects are only focused on short-term results, which means they do not work sustainably. And then, of course, the next aspect of the problem is that you have a lack of flexibility. The platform Business Insider in Germany just last week had an article where a very experienced people development person wanted to have a job, of course, a senior executive job, because that's her level of experience. And although all organizations claim we are so flexible with our job offers, when she said, I'm available 30 hours per week. Just to let you know, the usual contract in Germany is 39 hours. With certain corporations, it's 37 or 35 hours even. 30 hours, and every single organization cancelled and said, you cannot work here because we don't get enough hours from you. If that is still your approach, that you say the amount of hours is the most important aspect of someone adding value to your organization, you will face a tough time. Because when we look into scientific studies, which are now running, especially in Scandinavia, where they just test, and they are right now testing the 25-hour working week, which works brilliantly well when it's well focused, then you will face a tough time when you still say people have to work as many hours as possible. I just give you an example how bad it can be. One organization, which is in the Berlin-Brandenburg area, it's a supplier for the German automobile, so car industry. The owner, who is now in his mid-80s, has contracts in that one organization. I'm not going to tell you the name of the company because it's not about calling out people here. The owner of the company said, I have 45 hours a week in my contract because, and that was the reason he gave me, when I have 45 hours a week in my contract and other people only have 37 hours per week, I have 8 hours more, which means my people work one more day a week than with any competitor. And that is the really old-fashioned view of the amount of hours equals productivity. There's a massive difference between being busy doing something or simply being present or just filling the room or just sitting somewhere waiting until the clock moves forward and actually doing something which you can remotely consider being productive. If you still focus on the amount of hours of work only, the future for your talent acquisition looks pretty grim, because when you expect that people sit there with you for 45 hours a week, you better offer the perfect package for them, including a brilliant payment, because with traveling there and getting back, which of course we will have after the pandemic again in certain contexts, and especially these out-fashioned leaders will be very keen on having people on site again, then people of course will say, when you take that amount of time off me, you're going to pay me for it, including the time traveling to the location and getting back. So the often proclaimed flexibility suddenly disappears when you, in practice, look at the situation where people simply say, I would like to pick you up on the flexibility offer, and you say, oh, well, sorry, no, that is not really available on the higher levels in the hierarchical pyramid. Here you have to work full time. And this is not sustainable for the future. You will lose talent. The talent that you lose will call you out for a good reason. And then you have platforms like Kununu in Germany, or you have the platform like Glassdoor.com, where people simply put to public, this is what I experience. Be aware that this promise is just not existent as soon as you want to have a career on the higher ladder of the hierarchical pyramid. And that is something where you have to change. Another aspect, and of course we look into how you can change at the end of this podcast, another aspect of why projects go wrong is that you don't have a PMO. Some people now will sit there and think, what's a PMO? Yeah, that's part of the issue. Project Management Office, a place where all projects in your organizations are managed. And when you have many projects going on, synergies of course may happen when you know that these projects are running. However, either there is no project management office, PMO, at all, or when I ask where is the PMO, someone says, oh, we have someone who's doing that on the side. Saying that someone is doing the PMO on the side means that one person has a lot of Excel sheets and Microsoft project files on their computer looks at them once a week and makes 2 or 3 smart comments, more or less smart comments about them, because that's the only thing you can do. PMO is not a side hustle. PMO is nothing you do just a bit on the side. PMO is at least a position where you need 20 hours a week to deeply look into what's going on in your organization and where can you find synergies. So look at your situation and try if you can find any kind of synergies. And by the way, when we talk about offers, a PMO is a great offer for people who work in your organization because they know that projects in your company, in your organization, are handled professionally. By the way, when we talk about people, often the lack of investment into people is another big issue. And I just give you an example because people will now say, oh, we had a pandemic and it's really difficult for us. Well, it certainly is not, because your business is still running when you listen to this, most likely. And if not, you're probably on the way finding a new place where you work. When you look at a company like Sol, S-O-L, like the sun in Finnish, because the company's from Finland, making $1 billion a year. So it's not a small organization in a highly competitive market, highly diverse market as well. And also they are offering diverse services. Go on sol.fi, that's the top level domain for Finland, and look at what they do. You see they offer many different services, a very diversified portfolio in a very competitive market, which for sure is not a rich market at the moment. They put 2% of their revenue. By the way, it's a family-led business. They put 2% of their annual revenue into training of their employees. And I don't mean 2% with all these tricks you do, because in some organizations they say, oh, we also have someone internally coaching people by just giving them tips during the day. So we just calculate that with $500 an hour and just put that into our calculation to show how much investment we do into training our people. That's nonsense, and you know that. You know that these formulas are nothing else than you trying to make up an investment into the people. 2% means professional training. Getting professional training companies in, paying them the usual professional fees. 2% of their revenue goes into training. And that is something where many organizations struggle. Look into your numbers, look into what you invested in people, and I can tell you that you most likely will be far away from 2% a year. However, people expect, for a very good reason, that you train them. And of course, when you say, oh, sorry, we only give you factual training, so something like soft skills or personal development, that is something you have to do by yourself. So first, when people pay for it by themselves, they will leave your organization because they want to go for an organization that actually values that someone invests their time and money into training, and they prefer that an organization does it for them because that keeps them motivated to stay. Also, and I heard that unfortunately quite a number of times from normally not very well qualified people, developers, when you say that personal development belongs into private investment and that's something people should do in their private life, you can of course say that. I am reasonably sure that your employees bring their personality to work. I think they do. You can't show up without a personality. And wouldn't it be a good thing when you could have a positive impact on that? I can of course understand, because some people consider personal development something like motivational, inspirational, woo-woo with chumbawamba, jump, clap and dance stuff. That's of course nothing you should ever do as a business expenditure. I would not waste a single penny on these kind of events because there is no scientific evidence that this works. So look at hiring people, look at getting external people in who deliver training and coaching, who have a proper track record and where you can see that they have the scientific idea of how things really work. So the investment, the lack of training you deliver is a massive issue when it comes to proper project management. And of course, a lack of empathy. I can just give you an example which was shocking, which just happened on Twitter last week. And I am now going to quote it word by word, because otherwise I probably still would not believe that this happened. So you may know that sometimes people order food with a delivery service. And I am now very sorry for the words. I apologize in advance, but I will quote someone. By the way, that person deleted their social media profiles afterwards because got a slight backlash. Someone tweeted on Twitter and said, Again, I'm sorry for the words, but I have to quote it word by word because it's his words. That person said, it really fucks me off when the delivery man from Lieferando, that's the company, uses our elevator, because the elevator is only for people who live here and for our guests. It's not for the workers. I nearly order every second day, and I always put in the description that they shouldn't use the elevator, but they simply do not learn it. That statement already is appalling. When you have a company business, when you have a company building where you say we have a special elevator for food delivery or for people bringing goods up and down, that's fine. But when you have a building where simply someone lives, like in this case as it is described here, then it is simply appalling that you expect that someone walks up, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 10, 15, 20 levels just because you don't like 15 seconds of food smell in your elevator, or you don't like when people who wear a delivery outfit suddenly are seen in your building. This is really unacceptable behavior. But when you think it can't get any worse, it can. Because the company, Lieferando, then commented on that tweet and said, hey, we're really sorry that the working guy used the elevator. Please send us your order number so we can check the whole thing. What is going on with you? What is wrong with people doing something like that? By the way, someone from politics, someone from a very left-wing political party, commented just below it, are you okay, guys? And from there it escalated, because of course the statement is completely unacceptable, but these people are people who work in organizations. A lack of understanding of the issues of other people's work is a massive issue when it comes to project management. And it's often unconscious bias, it is often a lack of awareness, and often it is plain arrogance, because people think they are better than others. And that, unfortunately, becomes more and more present. And by the way, I don't care from which business school you come. I don't care from which university you come. When you think you can treat someone better or worse based on their university education, you haven't understand much in this life. When you think you can treat someone bad because they don't have academic education, you should not be in charge of people. And by the way, Hubertus Joly, the guy who saved, the CEO who saved Best Buy, a professor from Harvard University, was the one who said from the very first day, give me a shirt, put me in a shop, and I work there because I simply have to see what we do wrong. That is the right people attitude, and that is why he was successful. By the way, he wrote a book about that called The Heart of the Business. Highly recommended. You really should read that. It's an amazing book which tells you what's really important in business. So what people often look for when something in a project goes wrong, they are looking for guilt, not solutions. Maybe you know that, and maybe you heard that when something goes wrong, the first question someone says is, whose fault is it? And whose fault is it is the wrong question at that point in time. The first step is how to solve the issue and solve it completely and sustainably. And then during an analysis, you can then see what did go wrong, so the factual side, and the least important part of that is whose fault is it? You only have to look at whose fault is it when someone, for example, violated laws, did ethically or morally questionable or even illegal activities. Then, of course, you have to look at who was it. But often there is more value in training people that they do better in the future instead of just punishing them. Because from punishment, of course, I have to exclude illegal activities here. There, of course, will be a punishment every time, and that's appropriate. However, when you do not train people but only punish, you will demotivate them professionally, and that will have a massive impact on future projects. So how to do better? Of course, you can give them training or coaching. You can get consultants in. Mentoring programs are often very successful. During your events, you can have professional speakers giving impulses about the issue, or you have a project or interim managers there. And I'm happy to talk with you about that. Just drop me an email and then we talk about it. By the way, that is something which people often ask. Is there more than the podcast? I still get these emails where people say, is there more than a podcast? Yes, there is. And sorry for not mentioning it during the last weeks. When you go to expert.nb-networks.com, so for our American listeners, expert.nb-networks.com, just put your email address there. Once per week, you get an email with all the resources. And one thing is very important here. It's 100% content. There's an ad-free guarantee. As you see, we don't do advertising. We only do content like we do here. So feel free to sign up. So how to do better? Because we always want to look into how to do better. Aspect number one, the focus must be, where should the organization be developed to? What is the goal? Where should the organization be in 1 year, 2 years, 5 years, 10 years? Many people don't know this goal. Many people only know, oh, we have this project and then we deliver the project, and then there might be a next project, so we deliver the next project, and then there is the one after the next project. So they just keep on working without knowing why and where they are going. And of course, you miss a lot of value to develop the organization in the right way when you don't know where you develop. It's pretty pointless to work in a direction when you don't know what the direction is. When the only direction is do these tasks, you might feel that everything you do is not only pointless, but senseless, feels a bit in vain, and you actually might feel pretty useless or demotivated. So the first focus has to be, where does the organization want to develop? What is the goal? And then you have to stick to the values which you proclaim. And often when I look on website, it says, oh, we focus on the human being, and we have flat hierarchies, and we offer you training and qualification and a great payment and flexible job offers, blah, blah, blah. And most of that is not true. And I have no idea why organizations still try to get away with that. Because since we have evaluation platforms where employees can evaluate their employers, it will get worse. When you offer more and more on your website, which then will not be offered in real life. And I'm not only talking about CEO compensation. Please look at all the levels in your organization, on every single level of your hierarchy, and please ask them, do you think that the values we proclaim are lived by our management, by our executives? And in many cases, you will find out it's not the case. And that will have a very significant, not only short-term, but also mid- and long-term impact in a negative way on your organization. Aspect number 3 of how to do it better, you need to have your projects managed professionally. You need a project management office as long as you're not a really small organization. And really small, I mean 5 people or less. As soon as you have 10 people, maybe a bit more, then you need people who do project management professionally. And very important is, it is not about the certification, because often people ask, oh, how can we do the certification? Certifications might be helpful for a certain wording and a bit of content, but it's not about the certificate. The certificate will not solve your issues. You can be the highest certified organization on planet Earth and still do not perform well, because everything you do misses out on the factors I told you before, and these factors are often not part of a certification. So your projects have to be ran professionally from a factual, but also from a soft skill and human point of view. And please always distinguish between projects, and of course you should define what is a project in your organization, but what do you do when there's a smaller amount of tasks? So you have some sort of undertaking, some sort of proposal, a development plan, or you have some sort of transactions going on. When does the term project come into place? When is it a project? Is it a certain amount of money involved? Certain amount of people? Is it a certain amount of people hours involved, or the duration in days, weeks, maybe months, or even years? Is it the amount of risk you have to take? Is it certain clients being involved? Is it certain product groups being involved? Or is it certain departments being involved? Or is it a mixture of many, what I just said, or even other factors? So for example, one organization told me, oh, with us, transport and the duration of transport is very important. Yeah, then please take this key performance indicator, KPI, into account. But also be aware that CSFs, as I said in podcast before, the critical success factors, the soft skill factors are very important as well. Just be sure that you have a definition, what is a project in your organization? And then please stick to proper competence. And I just give you an example, because in the last weeks we often had these examples where people say, why do so many football players suddenly become football managers, or even CEOs, chairmen, football executives? And of course they run it against the wall because they have no clue about what they do. Surprisingly, there's a massive difference between playing football and leading an enterprise where the product is a football game at the end. Because one is running a company and the other one is doing sports. So when you look at real competence, and now I'm going to give you an example from Germany, FC Bayern Munich has a CEO, and the CEO is called Herbert Hainer. And many people will now say, I never heard that name. Exactly. Because Herbert Hainer is not focused on his own ego. He's not focused on being in the spotlight. His focus is not to be the number one, look at me, rock star, shooting star kind of person. And now, of course, people might wonder, oh, is it another football player just getting a seat on top level to make a couple of millions and just leave in a couple of years after they failed? No. Herbert Hainer is the former CEO of Adidas, who made Adidas from a very small local German brand into an international sports and celebrity brand, especially international sports brand. This is why they hired him for FC Bayern Munich, because they moved away from saying, because you play football quite well, you can be on our management team. You have to look into proper qualification and science. And again, I want to tell you, the degree on paper is not the most important factor. When you have someone with a PhD from an elite university, this still, although the person, of course, is factually very qualified, the most important aspect you can learn from having a PhD from an elite university is the social upbringing. Most likely someone from a wealthy family. It is 10 times more likely that you do a PhD when you're really smart, when you come from a privileged family compared to coming from a working class family. So only a social upbringing takes away 90% of the chances many people have. So be sure that qualification is based on experience. Look at the soft factors. Are people able to deal with other people when it comes to project management, leadership, communication, conflict management? Many important aspects. But after that, you see that Herbert Hainer is very successful in building the brand FC Bayern Munich, who now has the highest amount of fan clubs in the Asian area. And many people wondered, why is the person Herbert Hainer focusing on the Asian market, not on the North American market? Well, first, the Northern American market is already pretty busy with American football or baseball, ice hockey. So getting a football franchise started there is a lot more competitive, although Major League Football now is taking up slowly but steadily. However, if you look into the Northern American market and the amount of customers you might have, looking into the Asian market and the number of customers you might have there, slight difference. There are a tiny bit more customers available in the Asian market, and also there is a lot more space to win because there are not that many sports which are already professionally taking a market and marketed in a way which is known, for example, from Europe or the US. This is what's called professional project management. You may or may not like the club, you may or may not like the person, but this is professional management. Also from the soft skill point of view. And by the way, also FC Bayern Munich was one of the very first teams having a professional e-gaming team, something which many people laughed about. E-gaming now has 20% of the value of the German car industry. So who's laughing now? A car industry which is more than 100 years old, and within only 5 years, e-gaming took 20% of the value. So I would be rather concerned if you're not missing the train of digitization. And maybe it's time to catch up right now. So when we talk about project management at the end, it's about methods and tools, but not only hard facts, but also the soft facts. And the soft factors are becoming more and more important. So when you get someone on the team, no matter if it's someone internal, external, someone who's going to stay for a constant amount of time or who's there only for a short period in time, always focus on not someone being qualified on paper, but someone who is able to get along with the people, to lead the people, to fit into your organization's culture. And by the way, if you're listening to this either on Apple Podcast or on YouTube, feel free to put something in the comments. I'm always happy to get the discussion started. Of course, I'm very happy when you like the podcast. Just leave me an evaluation and give me a good score if you like to. And of course, if you'd like to have a discussion with me personally, just drop me an email, nb@nb-networks.com, or for our American listeners, nb@nb-networks.com. No, it doesn't cost a single penny. I'm always happy to talk with you about what we discuss here. What is most important right now is when you listen to this podcast and you may now have a list of things you think about you should do, put them into practice. Because it is of no help when you have a very long to-do list, which is still up to date in 2 years' time, because you haven't done any of it. Having ideas is a good point to start from, but of course, putting them in practice is the most important part. And I'm, of course, happy to help you if you'd like me to do so. And now I wish you all the best implementing these steps in your organization. And for this week, there's only one thing for me left to say. Thank you very much for your time.